Rick Morris with a journey towards our purpose and destiny. We're on step 22, episode 4, titled Son and Daughter. One thing about that title I want to say up front, Jesus, when he was on earth 2,000 years ago, was in a much different culture, and he made enormous strides to equate men and women. He looked at men and women equal. And for the time of his existence on earth, that was revolutionary. That's not what my topic is about today. My topic is about how we relate to our parents. We'll start out with a little story. This was a couple of decades ago. My daughter, or my whole family, was loaded up in the car. We just cleared the driveway. And I was thinking about when everybody was getting in the car, and I noticed that my teenage daughter, who was 12 or 13 at the time, just going into her teenage years, was wearing a mini skirt, and we were going to a function that I didn't think that was appropriate, and it apparently was in the evening. Now I had three choices. I could have pulled back in the driveway and said, "Go upstairs and put on something appropriate," and I could have chastised her. I could have avoided the whole issue and just bit my lip, or I could talk to God under my breath and hear what He had to say, and that's as as I remember it. That's what I did. So I drove straight to a clothing store at the time, and the name of the store was Gap, and I pulled out my credit card and handed it to my wife in the front seat, and I said, "Take her in the store and buy a new outfit that you feel like is appropriate for this evening." That's all I said. So my wife took the hint. My daughter was thrilled because she got some new clothes. And when they came out, she was wearing them, and I, you everything turned out turned out well. Well, today's episode is called Son and Daughter. In the step stage, now this is step 22, we discovered there's a lot more to know about God. The scriptures I selected three. He who loves wisdom makes his father glad. That's Proverbs 29, verse 3. Also, I picked out honor your father and mother that your days may be long in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. That's one of the 10 commandments. It's Exodus 20, verse 12. And then Paul reiterated that commandment in his letter to the Ephesians in the New Testament. He said, honor your father and mother that it may go well with you, that you may live long in the land. It's Ephesians 6, verses 2 and 3. So, an ideal son or daughter is respectful of their parents. If we honor them, we're promised to live in the land God has reserved for us. He says we'll live a long time. He gives us gifts and talents that are unique to us because we're unique. Our gifts and talents are unique. No one is made like us. No one has the same gifts and talents. Ours are unique. We also have a unique purpose and destiny. That's what we've been talking about in previous episodes. But what is honoring our father and mother? What does it look like? How would you describe it? I'll pause, you think about it, answer, and then I'll give you my answer. My answer is esteem and respect. When we esteem our father and mother, we lift them up in our mind's eye. We listen carefully to what they have to say. When we respect them, we defer any conflicts we have in our mind and take a good look at their point of view. We understand that they've lived much longer than we have on this earth. They have faced similar storms of life, and we do our best to learn from them so we don't make the same avoidable mistakes that they did because of our inexperience. You know, a lot of us wish we had a do-over because our parents are no longer on this earth. Sometimes it's easier to understand a principle when we see opposite examples. The opposite of honor is dishonor. It's dishonor and disrespect to roll one's eyes when listening to what our parents have to say. It's also dishonor and disrespect to listen and then go out and do exactly the opposite of what they recommended. Sure, it's okay to respectfully and politely disagree with a carefully worded argument, but it's dishonor to call them disparaging names and curse them, especially to their face. It's disrespect to exit quickly and slam the door as an act of defiance. When we're young, it's difficult to see an issue from the standpoint of an older person. Satan and his minions are constantly spewing lies into a young person, such as they're old and stupid. They don't have a clue. He doesn't understand my generation. She is lame and out of touch with what's going on. You know, times and issues haven't changed much in 2,000 years. Jesus set a high bar with his attitude towards father and mother. There are many examples in the scripture. But I want to point out one example with his mother. They were at a wedding in Cana. This was before his ministry started. This was early. He was still assembling his disciples. And Mary asked Jesus to do something because the host were running out of wine at this wedding reception. Now, she probably had passed by and heard the servants talking, or one of them came to her. We don't know from the story exactly how it happened, but she knew they were running out of wine. And she went to Jesus and she said, "They have no more wine." Jesus responded, and probably in a whisper, but he responded. He said, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother, Mary, told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you to do." Wow. Now, there were 6 stone jars that were there. These were big jars, like 20 or 30 gallons. They're probably 4 or 5 feet tall, 3 or 4 feet anyway. Big old vats or jars. And Jesus said, "Fill those jars with water." And the servants filled them to the brim. Then Jesus said, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they did. They took it to the master. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine, he did not know at all where it came from. And the master of the feast went over to the bridegroom and he said, "Everyone serves their good wine first, and then when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you've kept the good wine until now." That's John 2, 6 through 11. You know, it goes along with that first sip of wine or that first beer always tastes better than anything afterwards. Anyway, Notice this story that Mary didn't argue with Jesus. She simply turned and told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you to do." She trusted her son. Now, Jesus didn't argue with her. He tried to reason with her. He said, "My hour hasn't come." I believe during all that, she heard God. And her response was to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you to do. Do whatever Jesus tells you to do." It was a perfect response. Jesus honored her by turning the water into wine. This recorded verbal exchange is an example of how parents and children ought to relate to each other. I believe that's one reason it's entered here in Scripture. It's for us to learn from it. The mother must listen to what God is telling her to say and do, just like I did in my opening story. The child must honor and be respectful, and God will back them up. At this moment in time, God decided to get Jesus' ministry started. They didn't talk about when we're going to start. He just made it happen. He told Jesus to have the servants fill the jars with water, and then God turned them into wine. I hope this story has helped you understand the relationship between parents and children. And we're going to go on to the next episode.